My name is Riley Morgan, and at 29 years old, the scent of garlic and rosemary filled our kitchen as I chopped vegetables for dinner. Steam curled from the pan, fogging the air with the comfort of routine, the ordinary rhythm Evan and I had built over years together. I liked evenings like this, the quiet companionship, the way he'd lean against the counter with a glass of wine while I cooked, sharing stories from our day, laughter punctuating our space. Tonight, though, the laughter didn't come. Evan's energy was off, just slightly, but enough to set my nerves on edge. He leaned against the doorway, phone in hand, fingers drumming lightly, face unusually flushed. My knife paused mid-chop. "Riley, I've been thinking," he said, voice hesitant, but carrying an oddly rehearsed cadence, about us, about relationships, and growth. I tilted my head, trying to read him, eyes narrowing ever so slightly. There was that shimmer of nervousness beneath his calm. Why is he nervous, I thought. He never hesitates like this. "I've been reading a lot lately," he continued, voice gaining a steady rhythm, like someone delivering a TED Talk, about ethical non-monogamy, polyamory, the future of relationships. We don't have to be limited by outdated conventions. We're young. We could explore it together. The words hit me like a splash of icy water. I froze, knife hovering above the cutting board, heart pounding. Polyamory. The concept was foreign, alien even. But it wasn't the word itself that unsettled me. It was him, the Evan I knew, sitting there with that strange, self-satisfied smile, trying to sell me an idea he'd never shown interest in before. "You want an open relationship?" I asked cautiously, trying to keep my voice level, my stomach twisting. "It's not just open," he said, voice careful, precise. "It's about emotional growth, connecting with others while maintaining what we have. It doesn't have to threaten us. We can still love each other." I stared at him, searching for the man I thought I knew. My gut tightened with suspicion, a slow-burning unease that wouldn't be soothed by words. Something about his tone, the polish, the rehearsed certainty, it didn't fit. Evan never read relationship books. He doesn't watch TED Talks. He scrolls through memes, funny videos, random news. Suddenly, everything about tonight felt performative, like an act. I put down the knife, swallowed the lump in my throat. "Let me think about it," I said. He looked surprised, maybe even hopeful, like he'd expected an argument, a fight, or a dramatic refusal. Instead, I had given him measured calm. "Really? You'll consider it?" he asked. "Yes," I said slowly, "but it's a big decision. I need time." He smiled, pressed a soft kiss to my cheek, and went upstairs to shower. He left his phone on the table. I glanced at it. A text preview flashed on the lock screen. "Miss you, baby. Can't wait for tomorrow." From a study group, an interesting name for a contact. My stomach sank. That night, I called my closest friend, desperate for perspective. I recounted Evan's words. She didn't hesitate. "Riley, he's probably already cheating," she said. I laughed nervously, thinking she was exaggerating. "That's a stretch. I mean, maybe he's just curious." "Riley, this is the playbook. They cheat, feel guilty, then try to make it okay retroactively by asking you to open the relationship. Listen, I've seen it a dozen times. If he's suddenly into polyamory, trust me. Look closer." My mind spiraled. Could this really be true? I wanted to deny it, but the unease had taken root. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed replaying the conversation, dissecting every glance, every pause, every inflection. Evan had never suggested this before, never flirted with the idea. It was sudden, almost convenient. By morning, I had made a decision. I would not let intuition alone guide me. I needed facts, evidence. I couldn't live in the fog of doubt and suspicion. I scoured reviews for private investigators, eventually finding a discreet but highly recommended professional. The next day, I met him at a small cafe. He was calm, measured, professional. "Usually," he said as he sipped his coffee, "when someone suddenly wants an open relationship after years, there's often a reason, something they aren't telling you." I nodded, keeping my emotions in check. My voice was steady, even if my hands were trembling. "I need results as soon as possible. I can't live with suspicion." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Give me a week, maybe less, if they're not careful." As I walked back to the apartment, I felt a strange mixture of dread and determination. My heart ached at the thought of betrayal, yet I was steeling myself. I had loved Evan wholeheartedly, trusted him with my life, and shared countless quiet, intimate moments. But love without truth was a trap, and I would not be trapped. That night, I paced the apartment, replaying every detail of Evan's words and actions. I noticed subtle lies I had brushed aside. The odd excuse for a late night, an unexplained meeting that didn't quite add up, his sudden attention to relationship philosophies that had never interested him before. My chest tightened with the weight of suspicion, but beneath it, a strange clarity emerged. I would not confront him blindly. I would gather every piece of evidence before he could manipulate my perception. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, heart hammering. The apartment was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I need evidence, not feelings, not fear, facts, proof. The determination settled over me like armor. The path forward was painful and uncertain, but I could feel it. A reckoning was coming, and I would meet it on my own terms. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath, whispering to myself, I will see the truth, and when I do, nothing will be the same. The next morning, I woke to the soft hum of the city outside my apartment, but sleep had abandoned me entirely. My thoughts were a tangled web of what-ifs and how could he's. Every memory of Evan, the warmth of his hands on mine, the late-night whispers, the small ways he had shown he cared, suddenly seemed like scenes from someone else's life, carefully staged for me. I met the private investigator, a man named Marcus, at a quiet cafe that smelled faintly of roasted coffee beans and old books. He was in his late 40s, calm, unassuming, but his eyes had a sharpness that suggested he saw everything, missed nothing. I need you to be discreet, I said, sliding a folder across the table. I want proof, dates, times, locations, anything unusual. I can't live in doubt. Marcus nodded. Usually people come when they suspect, but they hesitate. You've made the right choice. If he's suddenly advocating polyamory after years, there's often something he's hiding. I tried to keep my composure, sipping coffee that had gone cold half an hour ago, but inside, a storm raged. Suspicion had sharpened into a knife-edge focus. Every detail of Evan's recent behavior replayed in my mind. The text messages he deleted too quickly, the late-night meetings with vague explanations, the subtle evasions about his friends' names. Over the next few days, I observed him like a detective in my own home. I noted the rhythm of his life, when he left for work, who he called, the small pauses when he thought I wasn't paying attention. My journal became a detailed map of his movements, times, and inconsistencies. I was meticulous, deliberate, almost clinical. Yet beneath the professional exterior, a deep ache throbbed in my chest, a betrayal I hadn't fully allowed myself to feel. Then, 4 days later, Marcus called. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "Sit down," he said. I did, gripping the edge of the kitchen table. "You ready?" "Yes," I said, though my voice was tight. "Evan isn't seeing just one other woman. He's seeing 3. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. My mind stalled. 3. Different women, different days, different lives, all carefully separated from mine," Marcus went on, detailing each encounter, each lie, each fabricated story Evan had told. Woman 1. She believes he's recently single. Their dinners are regular, intimate, framed as casual, but always clandestine. Woman 2. She thinks he broke up with someone recently. Early morning workouts and study sessions cover for dates in hotels and restaurants. Woman 3. She believes he's escaping an abusive ex. He presents himself as unavailable, mysterious, someone she's rescuing emotionally. Marcus's report included photographs, timestamps, hotel receipts, and screenshots of messages. I stared at the files in disbelief. Each one was a precise, deliberate deception, a parallel life I had never imagined. I sank into a chair, mind racing. I could almost see him in each frame, smiling, charming, whispering sweet nothings, carefully keeping his story straight for each woman. And the cruelest cut, he was doing all of this while telling me he loved me every single day. My chest ached, not just with betrayal, but with the realization of how carefully orchestrated it all was. He hadn't stumbled, he had chosen this methodically. Yet amid the shock, I felt clarity forming, icy and precise. My anger was tempered with strategy. I couldn't confront him blindly. I had to understand the full scope of his deception. Every receipt, every message, every photograph became a weapon, not for revenge, but for truth. I began mapping his network of lies, noting overlaps, alibis, and patterns. Each woman thought she was his only one in a different timeline. Every secret meeting had a fabricated backstory, every affectionate gesture carefully placed. I documented it all, my handwriting neat, meticulous, almost ritualistic, as if the act of writing could contain the chaos in my heart. By nightfall, I sat on the edge of the bed with a folder in my lap, photographs and receipts spread out around me like evidence in a courtroom. My hands trembled slightly, not with fear, but with the weight of what I had uncovered. Each piece of proof etched a story of betrayal deeper into my bones. And yet, underneath the shock, there was a thread of resolve. I would not let myself be manipulated. I would not allow this man to dictate the narrative of my life any longer. My mind was already planning the next steps, contacting the women carefully, preparing the confrontation, ensuring nothing was left to chance. In the dim light of my apartment, I whispered to the empty room, "You think you've been clever, Evan, but I see it all, and I won't be fooled." The storm outside mirrored my own inner turbulence. The world felt heavy and expectant, as if it knew what was coming. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a calculated labyrinth of lies, and I had just begun to trace its walls. I closed the folder gently, as though sealing a promise to myself. My reflection in the window stared back, tired but resolute. I would uncover every truth, and when I did, there would be no escaping the reckoning. By the 5th day, my apartment had become a war room. Receipts, photos, timestamps, and messages were spread across the dining table like evidence in a criminal case. Every small detail of Evan's secret life was mapped, cross-referenced, and cataloged. The more I saw, the more surreal it felt. The charming man I had trusted, the laughter-filled evenings, the whispered promises, all overlaying a web of lies so intricate it could have been scripted for a film. Each receipt told a story. Dinners at restaurants I'd never heard of, hotel stays during the work week, movie tickets purchased with the credit card we shared. Every line on the statements matched a corresponding photograph or text message. He had carefully orchestrated it, timing each encounter so I would remain blissfully unaware. I began reaching out anonymously to the 3 women. Carefully worded messages, no identifying information, simply a question. "Are you aware of any other relationships?" Their responses varied, but all revealed the same truth. Each believed a different story. Woman 1. Thought he was newly single, heart open after a recent breakup. "He's amazing," she wrote. "So kind, attentive. I don't understand why he says he's seeing anyone else." Woman 2 believed he had just left someone else. "He told me it was casual," she typed. "He seemed so sincere. I can't believe he'd lie to me." Woman 3, convinced she was rescuing a man from an abusive past. "He's vulnerable," she said. "I've never felt this connection with anyone else." As I read, a chill ran down my spine. Each narrative was carefully engineered by Evan. He had compartmentalized his life into 3 neat little boxes, each woman convinced she was the only one, while I remained the unknowing center of his life. I felt a complicated storm inside, betrayal, anger, disbelief, and a cold, precise clarity. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was deliberate. I revisited my memories in painstaking detail. Each date, each night at home, each affectionate gesture, everyone now had a shadow attached, a hidden truth I hadn't imagined. I had been part of an elaborate performance, the central audience in his personal theater of lies. The next step was delicate. I needed to be certain before confronting Evan. I cross-referenced the credit card charges with photographs, messages, and timestamps, creating a timeline so precise it left no room for denials. There were 4 months of evidence, meticulously tracked. 4 months of dinners, hotel stays, and moments of intimacy spent with women who each thought they were his only. I also noticed the psychological manipulation embedded in every interaction. Evan had constructed versions of himself tailored to each woman. Charming, vulnerable, mysterious, unavailable. Each one believed she had a unique claim to him, while I had been led to believe in a faithful, monogamous partner. The apartment was silent, except for the hum of my laptop and the occasional creak of the building settling. I could feel my pulse in my temples, steadying it with each breath. My hands worked quickly, organizing evidence into folders, labeling everything with meticulous care. I was preparing for the inevitable confrontation, anticipating every excuse he might use, every lie he could try to spin. In the quiet moments, my mind wandered to the intimacy I had shared with him. There was grief there too, a soft ache for the love I had believed in. But it was tempered by determination. I wouldn't allow heartbreak to cloud my judgment. This was about truth, clarity, and reclaiming control over my life. I paused, staring out the window as the city lights blinked in the distance. I could imagine him now, carrying out the same rituals with the three women, smiling, whispering, lying. The surreal quality of it made my stomach churn. This man I had loved was living multiple lives right under my nose, each one carefully constructed, each one feeding into the illusion that he was devoted only to me. And yet, as I looked over the meticulously documented evidence, I felt a sense of empowerment begin to bloom. I had the facts, I had clarity, and I had a plan. I would confront him on my terms, armed with truth and strategy, not just emotion. The final step in my preparation was internal. I rehearsed the confrontation in my mind, imagining his excuses, rehearsing my own responses, imagining the moment when he could no longer deny the truth. Every scenario ended the same way, in full accountability. By the end of the night, I sat back in my chair, exhausted but resolute. The folder of evidence rested in front of me, heavy with the weight of betrayal and revelation. I whispered to the empty apartment, my voice calm but unwavering. He thinks he's been clever, but I see it all now, and soon he will too. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside me, the city alive with distant sirens, horns, and life, while I sat in quiet anticipation. I was ready. The truth was ready, and when it emerged, nothing would ever be the same. The morning sun cut through the blinds in jagged lines, casting the apartment in alternating bands of light and shadow. My hands were steady, my mind razor sharp, though my chest throbbed with anticipation and fear. Today, everything would change. I called the three women, carefully orchestrating the encounters so that they would arrive separately at a neutral location, a small lobby in Evan's building. Each message was precise, factual, stripped of emotion. We need to talk about Evan. It's urgent. Please come alone. The first to arrive was woman one. She looked nervous, eyes darting as if she had a secret she feared would be exposed. I met her gaze firmly. You're not imagining anything, I said quietly. He's been seeing multiple women simultaneously. I have proof. Her face drained of color. What do you mean? I handed her a folder containing photographs, receipts, and messages. Look through it. Everything matches up. Dinners, dates, hotel stays. He's been orchestrating separate lives while you believed you were his only one. She flipped through the evidence, trembling. The disbelief in her eyes mirrored my own shock from days ago. I can't. I thought I was special, she whispered. You were, I said gently. But so were the others. He created illusions for each of you. You weren't alone in his lies. Woman two arrived next. Her nervousness was sharper, defensive. This is a mistake. You don't understand. He told me he was just getting over someone. I handed her the evidence as well. The photos, timestamps, and receipts formed an irrefutable narrative. She sank into a chair, stunned. Her hands shook. 3 months, 2 months, and I didn't even know he had a girlfriend. I met her gaze steadily. You weren't his only deception. He compartmentalized his life so that each of you believed in something false. By the time woman 3 arrived, the tension was almost tangible. Her face fell the instant she saw the folders on the table. Wait, what's happening? I gestured for her to sit. He told you a story, didn't he? About being hurt, unavailable, someone you could help? All lies. Everything in here, receipts, messages, photographs, proves otherwise. You weren't his only one. None of you were. Tears welled in her eyes, but there was anger too, directed as much at him as at the situation itself. Why would he do this? She asked, voice trembling. I trusted him. I shook my head slowly. Because he chose to. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. 4 months of calculated deception, of lying to all of us while maintaining appearances. That's the truth. Not an accident, not a lapse, but a choice. The 3 women looked at each other, realization dawning, fury rising, grief mingling with disbelief. In that moment, the illusion shattered, and reality settled heavily over all of us. I waited, silent, until I felt the weight of truth fully land in the room. Then I spoke, voice calm but resolute. He cannot manipulate any of us anymore. None of us need to be part of his lies. The door opened behind me. Evan stood there, his face an unreadable mask of confusion and sudden fear. He stepped in, hand raised as if to speak, but the silence in the room was a wall. I held up the folder. This is everything, every lie, every encounter, every fabricated story. His jaw tightened. Riley, it's not what you think. Not what I think, I interrupted, voice steady. I've walked through every detail. I've spoken to the others. I have proof. 4 months, Evan. 4 months of lies, and now it ends. His eyes darted between the 3 women and me, searching for an excuse, a reprieve, a way to salvage his narrative. But there was none. I continued, my voice calm, almost clinical. You tried to manipulate, to compartmentalize, to convince each of us that we were special, that your deception was justifiable, but truth doesn't bend for convenience. You made choices every day, and now you will face them. Evan's shoulders slumped. The charm, the rehearsed innocence, it was gone, stripped away by evidence and confrontation. He opened his mouth, closed it, searching for words, but the weight of his actions rendered him mute. I turned to the 3 women. You all deserve clarity, honesty, and respect. He cannot give that to any of you. You need to move forward without him in your lives. Tears mingled with fury as the women absorbed the truth. One by one they left, faces pale, eyes red, but heads held high. And I remained, alone in the apartment, the silence deafening. I sank into a chair, exhausted but resolute. The betrayal had cut deep, but I felt a new strength rising from it. Clarity, control, and self-respect. I had faced the storm, traced every thread of deception, and emerged armed with truth. Evan remained for a moment, silent, defeated. Riley, please, I can explain. We can work through this. I shook my head slowly. No, Evan, you cannot. Not after 4 months of lies. Not after stealing my trust, my time, my money, and my heart. This ends now. You will leave, and you will never return. He left, the door clicking shut behind him, and I exhaled slowly, a long, trembling breath that carried months of fear, grief, and betrayal out into the world. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of freedom. The storm had passed. The truth had emerged. And in that clarity, I realized I would survive this. I would rise from it. I would rebuild. Because no one has the right to manipulate or diminish your life, not even someone you love. The apartment was quiet now, stripped of the tension, of Evan, of the lingering echoes of betrayal. I sat on the edge of the sofa, a warm cup of tea cradled in my hands, staring out the window at the city lights flickering in the distance. They twinkled indifferently, unaware of the storm that had raged in my life, and yet somehow it felt comforting. Life continued. Life endured. I went through the apartment slowly, gathering the remnants of a life that had been shared yet built on deceit. Photos of vacations, birthdays, small moments of laughter. They all told a story of love, yes, but also of carefully curated illusion. I packed them carefully, not in anger, but in acknowledgement. This was the past, and it had served its purpose in shaping the strength I now carried. The legal and financial consequences of Evan's choices had already begun. The shared credit card charges had been documented. Restitution was arranged. It was almost surreal, the way life's rules could assert themselves so cleanly when deception had been so chaotic. I had control now, not through revenge, but through truth and measured action. I also checked in on the women Evan had deceived. We exchanged cautious texts, a shared acknowledgement of betrayal, and eventually, mutual understanding. Their grief and anger mirrored my own, and in that solidarity, I felt an unexpected sense of closure. None of us had deserved this. None of us had been at fault. The responsibility lay entirely with the man who had spun 3 lives while pretending to maintain one. Night fell, and the quiet hum of the city became a lullaby rather than a background to anxiety. I pored over my journal, reflecting on each step, the suspicion, the meticulous investigation, the confrontation. I realized that my intuition had been right all along, a subtle pulse that I had initially tried to quiet. I had learned to trust it, and in doing so, I had regained agency over my life. The lessons were harsh, but invaluable. Love cannot thrive on lies, trust is not owed unconditionally, and self-respect is not negotiable. I had loved Evan fully, but love alone does not excuse deception. Recognizing this was not bitterness, it was clarity, it was freedom. In the days that followed, I moved to a new apartment, a fresh space that belonged entirely to me. The boxes of shared memories were gone, replaced by new beginnings. I didn't erase the past, I acknowledged it, but I no longer allowed it to define my present. I reconnected with friends, sharing my experience with candor and honesty. They were my anchors, reminders that trust, once broken, could be rebuilt not in others, but in myself. And slowly the ache in my chest softened, replaced by a quiet strength, a knowing that I had survived betrayal and emerged intact, wiser, and stronger. A text pinged on my phone one evening from a close friend. "Drinks this weekend?" I smiled. I typed back simply, "Yeah, I'm free." It was the first time in months that I felt the unburdened joy of choice. I was free, not just from Evan, but from doubt, from fear, from the shadows of manipulation. I could love again, but this time with eyes wide open, heart cautious but unafraid, and a soul strengthened by truth. As I closed my journal that night, I whispered into the quiet room, my voice steady and certain. I survived the lies, I faced the betrayal, and I emerged whole. No one can take that from me. The city outside continued to pulse with life, indifferent yet persistent, much like me. I was moving forward, one deliberate, conscious step at a time. And in that movement, I found not just recovery, but empowerment, self-respect, and the unwavering knowledge that truth is always worth the wait. I had lost deceit, but I had gained myself, and that finally was everything.